Well, Charles Fillmore once said that we build the church of Christ, the church within ourselves, by looking within and examining every brick and determining whether it's useful, valuable, whether it provides us what we really need in our lives. Those bricks are our beliefs, our attitudes, our thoughts about God, our thoughts about ourselves. So in a way, we could say that not only was he talking about building the church or the consciousness of God, but building your life. And as I thought about that, I remember it reminded me of a couple of major events in my life. I don't know, you think I can tell you about them or what? One of those was kindergarten. No, one of them was in 1964. Do you remember 1964? Oh, I was just a mere infant at the time. Yeah, I was 20. And after a lifetime in Cincinnati, my parents decided they wanted to change what they were doing. Mother had, it's funny, I never called her Mom. Mama. Mother. Mother had been teaching dancing. She had a series of about 13 dance studios around the city that would be in schools, churches, and she had other teachers who actually did most of the teaching. She also worked real estate. Dad worked at Procter & Gamble. He used to say he was a sanitation engineer. You know what that meant? He was the janitor. They decided to change their lives, and they bought a small 17-unit motel on the Galt Ocean Mile in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, across the street from the ocean. 1964, we moved down there in May. June, July, August came around. You know the seasons in Florida, don't you? You have tourist season. You have mildew season. And you have hurricane season. August 27. This thing came, I guess, off the coast of Africa. It came across the Atlantic. Oh, it hit the Bahamas, Haiti, Cuba, and it kind of made a it was big enough that it hit Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Now we're across the street from the ocean. You know what that's like. We're six feet above sea level. Hurricane Cleo, when it hit Haiti, it was about a Category 3. After Fort Lauderdale went on up the coast, and as it went up the coast, it killed 100 and some people. But it hit Fort Lauderdale pretty hard. I remember that very well. A hurricane lasts about 24 hours. That's a long time to be cooped up with howling winds outside of 100 plus miles an hour. At some points, I think it was up to 150 miles an hour. I was in a second floor motel room on the back side of the building. We were away from the ocean side. I looked out the window and I saw a washing machine. Not arcing to go down and hit the ground, but flying straight and level at the level of the second floor window. That's a lot of weight to be flying through the air. Afterwards, well, I did walk out into the eye of the hurricane, and let me tell you how beautiful it was. I did hear birds singing. The sun was glorious. Oh, the devastation was amazing all around us. The motel swimming pool looked like the sunken gardens of Babylon. It had glass, broken glass, palm branches, all kinds of debris in it. Guess whose job it was to keep the swimming pool clean? And you don't drain them, because at that point of 6 feet above sea level, you drain the pool, the water table pushes it out of the ground. So you don't drain it. So I had to go in there afterwards with shoes and clean up broken glass, hundreds of pounds of sand, branches of all kinds of things, furniture. We had a sign on the front of the motel that it had an I-beam covered in concrete out at an angle and one from the building attaching it this way, covered in concrete, and the sign was concrete. It was ripped off. Doors on the motel rooms were ripped off. It was amazing. And of course, there was no power for a very long time. Amazing how friendly people were. Going out trying to find food, people were very, very friendly, courteous. It's amazing. When you saw that kind of devastation that I saw that day, you think, my God, why don't they just give up? There's no sense. This is too big to rebuild, to do anything with. 10 years later, 1974, I'm back in Cincinnati. I graduated from the conservatory. I was teaching piano lessons in a music studio, and then I was also teaching piano lessons due to a friend of mine who had 3 kids, and she said, I'm going to arrange for you to have some piano students if you'll come up to our church and teach there one day a week. So I did that. That was in Mason, Ohio. Mason, Ohio is some miles south of a city called Xenia, Ohio. Have you heard of Xenia, Ohio? 1974, April 3rd. I was teaching in the church that day. The church had been built in 2 sections, much like this building. The front part of our building, 1906, and from those auditorium doors on back here, 1916. Well, at the juncture of these 2 parts of the building, that back wall of this auditorium is this thick. At this church, they had the social area that was built first. That was their first church. And then they added on a beautiful, beautiful sanctuary with big, heavy, stained wood beams in the ceiling. I mean, beams this wide. Looked like the inside, if you were looking down into the bottom of a ship. That's kind of, isn't a church a kind of ship for souls? It was a beautiful ceiling. And I was teaching up at the front of the sanctuary under one of those beautiful beams. Weather got a little nasty, and of course in the sanctuary I couldn't see anything through the stained glass windows. The mother of the child I was teaching was out in the other part of the church. She came in and she said, Greg, would you come out here and look at this and tell me if it's what I think it is? So she took me outside the sanctuary, down the hallway, which was then the education wing. It pointed out one of the Sunday school room windows and said, is that what I think it is? And I saw this thing shaped like a big V moving this way. It was a tornado. Now, they'd go to right, left. This was just getting bigger, which means it's headed directly at us. I said, yes, that's what you think it is. Let's go. I put them in the coat room, which was where the old building and the new building joined together. So all the walls in the coat room were brick, solid. They had been exterior walls before the addition. put them back in the corner of the coat room. There were a couple of coats hanging in there. I got in, packed up next to them, and put the coat around behind me. After a little bit of time, I heard the most horrendous noise. Sounded like a freight train coming. And then things shattering, glass breaking, things falling. I felt things pummeling my back. And after a while, there was dead silence. So I looked out, stepped to the door of the coat room, and I looked toward the sanctuary, and I saw daylight. At the doorway to the sanctuary, there was daylight and grass. The sanctuary was gone, right where I had been teaching. That big beam that was overhead where I was at the piano where I was teaching, it was down and had crushed the piano. We had been sitting right there. All the pews were gone. There were no walls standing in the sanctuary. I had a Volkswagen bus in those days, and it had been parked out in the parking lot. I looked out in the parking lot, my Volkswagen bus wasn't there. And then I found it in the next cornfield. It was still upright. But the whole bus looked like orange peel. You know, all those little dimples? The roof gravel had pelted my bus and pitted the entire paint and even the glass. It's pretty amazing. It did start. And with help, I got it out of the cornfield. But then we couldn't leave, and we had to spend time at a house nearby that got missed. Several hours until the roads were open, until the State Highway Patrol okayed it for us to travel, and I could head back for home. Of course, I didn't know what happened at home. That storm prompted many tornadoes, and it went on north to Xenia. In Xenia, Ohio, I think by the time it hit there was a Category 5. That's as big as they get. And 74 people died in Xenia, Ohio that day. Pretty amazing. Now you look at all that desolation, you wonder, why wouldn't people give up? Wouldn't they just quit, look around and say, it's no use. We can't do this. But you know, in our lives, we've all faced some kind of destruction. But Fort Lauderdale didn't die. Fort Lauderdale didn't lay down in the desolation and all the destruction and say, we can't redo this. They rebuilt. Faith, courage, energy came up and out of those people, and they rebuilt better. Correcting earlier mistakes in the city and in the way infrastructure was installed and built. Mason, Ohio, people did the same thing. They stood up and said, we can do this. And they built better, more beautiful. They rebuilt their lives. We sometimes decide that fate's against us, and there's no use trying to cope with apparent destruction. But out of that chaos can come faith, can come courage. And we can, when we look at our lives and say, wow, it's a mess. My life is gone. There's nothing I can do. Wait. We can build new and better. We can learn from the mistakes of the past and build the life the way we would choose now. As it is with these cities, so it is with our individual lives. Things happen, and sometimes we get discouraged. Sometimes it looks like everything's gone down in complete wreckage. But we don't have to say or settle for the idea that everything's lost. There's nothing that can be done. It's amazing what happens. You've heard stories, physical strength. In a very dramatic situation, there's an old story of a car falling on someone. And another person picking up the automobile. Where did that strength come from? On a normal day, they wouldn't be able to even lift it off the ground. We have resources, physical resources. We have mental resources within that can be tapped. And yes, there are also spiritual resources that we can touch. There are a variety of these spiritual resources that we can lay hold of. Those qualities are within us. We can't buy them anywhere, but they're free if we pay the price. And that price is to look to the Christ within you, to touch the power that's already there, to connect with what's been yours since the foundation of the world. Through prayer, through meditation, that provides the divine guidance for us to determine what elements are necessary to rebuild our lives and what elements we left out the first time round, what we would rather see and have this time in our lives. We can do this if we follow that light that's within us. You build a little here, a little there. Just like the great oak, it starts as a little tiny acorn. Used to think that was somewhat of a miracle. I remember one of our classes in grade school. We went out it was autumn, and we went out for a little field trip, walking around the neighborhood near school, picking up the beautiful colored leaves, seeing oak trees with acorns and picking up acorns. And I remember that in class we planted some acorns and later got to see little things sticking their little heads up above the dirt, above the filth that you would normally not want in your house, right? And there was new life. And if you nurture those little seedlings, what's going to happen? Something grand and magnificent is going to grow, becomes the giant of the forest. You can turn to Christ, Christ within yourself. Ask in the silence of your being. In Wednesday night's class, we've been talking about Myrtle and her various concepts, one of them being about the Christ. And we're coming to a chapter where we're going to talk about her relationship to Jesus, Christ. And I know she knew the difference between the two. One's the man, one's the divine pattern implanted within everyone. But how often you see her, the word conflate, putting them together and seeing Jesus Christ and calling upon that name of Jesus Christ. Seeing the pattern and the man as both accessible to us here and now. Think that's possible? Charles Fillmore said more than once in this room, Jesus Christ has been seen on our stage during our service. Not in his physical body, but in his fourth dimensional body. And yes, over the years, I've had people, some old timers, who were here for service and said afterwards, Greg, I saw someone on the stage, and I really believed it was Jesus Christ that was up there. I've heard that. Me, I've been too busy talking to see what's going on behind me. I do remember in the very beginning standing up at the lectern and feeling like there was a crowd behind me, and I wanted to turn around and shout, well, am I doing it right? Myrtle finally told me through one of the visitors. Yeah. So I guess that's okay. Thanks, Mert. You can touch those qualities for a pure and perfect life. If there are resources in the physical, such as the person who picks up an automobile when they couldn't lift probably 50 pounds, if you ask them. If there are mental reserves in our parts of our mental nature that are stronger than we now know and that we can draw upon, then there must be spiritual powers available to us as well. Remember the prophet Isaiah. I think perhaps he must have been asked this question. Are there other powers that are available to us in times of need or trouble? And this is what he said in the 40th chapter. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord, what do you think that means? Wait for the Lord. It doesn't mean standing on a street corner, Jesus, it's time you got here. Okay, God, where are you? You wait on the Lord when you're in the silence, when you turn within, when you wait expectantly for the word, the guidance, the wisdom that you seek. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Wouldn't that be nice to walk and not faint? I think back to 1964 and 1974. I saw people renewed in strength. I saw people who walked and weren't weary, cleaning up after these two, what some call disasters, after this destruction. When you think your life is in shambles around you, wait upon the Lord. Look within. Become still and start asking, Lord, show me Jesus Christ. Remember we used to use an affirmation, Jesus Christ, my healer, and then a prayer for healing. Well, Jesus Christ, my teacher, my guide, show me. Give me the strength I need. Give me the guidance I need. Give me these qualities that I need. And we shall walk and not be weary. Even as your life is right now, and if it's not in shambles, burning around your ankles, that's a good thing. But is it the way you would really have it? Is it as good as you'd like? Could it maybe use some rebuilding, some renovation? Are there some bricks in you that need to be taken out and looked at? Some beliefs that keep you limited, keep you stuck? Some attitudes about yourself, about God, about what God can do for you that need to be removed and replaced with a firmer foundation? Jesus also knew of that unlimited, unfailing source of spiritual power within when he said, and this is in the 4th chapter of John, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. Wouldn't that be lovely? Never thirst again. I drink this water and I will thirst again. But he's saying, when you drink of this water, the water that I shall give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. That water is spiritual wisdom, guidance, power. When you have it, you grow. When you have it, whatever's before you becomes clear to you, and you see the way through. When you have it, you have the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Hitchhiker's Guide to your life. That's a pretty powerful thing, don't you think? It's a pretty important thing. He knew there were spiritual reserves within us that we can draw upon to rebuild and reform our life. First step must be, you must believe in the presence and the power of God. Where's God? Well, if you've put God out there somewhere, distant and unapproachable, untouchable, then that's one of those bricks that needs to be replaced, that needs to be changed. Faith in God. Remember the father of the epileptic child who said to Jesus, I believe, help my unbelief. Have you ever felt like that? I believe in God, but there's some part in here, some aspect where I really don't believe. Someone very wise once said that's functional atheism. You know, I believe, but then in a certain area, I function like I don't believe. I believe. Help thou mine unbelief. When you begin here with that foundation, the presence and power of God is right here, right now. All the power of God, all the wisdom of God, all the intelligence of God is right here where I am. And that is available to me to work through me and help me rebuild my life. Back in 1982, I acquired a new thought. Boy, Myrtle did it in 1889. It took me till 1982. And the new thought that I laid hold of, that was very powerful for me at the time, don't let a part of you defeat the all of you. Don't let a part of you. Well, what part? Well, there's this little part that doesn't believe God can do this. Doesn't believe God can help here. Doesn't believe God can supply this. Doesn't believe one thing or another. That's a part that's defeating the all of us. That keeps us stuck. Don't let a part of you defeat the all of you. Now, I kind of went through the scripture. I looked at the apostles, evangelists. They went out and they preached and they did a variety of things. And I came up with some qualities. Qualities that I think are important. Qualities you may want to incorporate. Some, maybe not all of them, I don't know. But the list is on the back of your bulletin. The qualities for rebuilding your life. Faith, gratitude, love. Begin to decide which ones are missing in your life. Faith, gratitude, love, tolerance, wisdom, self-restraint, patience, perseverance, a desire to work or accomplish, harmony, courage, good expectation. Sometimes we are expectant, but we expect the negative. Good expectation, silence, honor, and temperance. They're good qualities. We can ask for any one of these. We can ask to be shown which of these we need to use to rebuild our lives. And a little here, a little there, step by step, we can build it bigger, better, more beautiful. more fulfilling. And that's a wonderful opportunity.